In this video I'm going to be showing you this next variation of the 50-50 granny square. So this is the one that is still a 50-50 but we swap every few rounds, and so you get this really nice solid, then traditional, then solid, and it's going to look really nice as it is worked up. So this is obviously just my sample piece from last time so that I could show you when I was doing the little 50-50 reveal video. But you can use any yarn and any hook that you like for this. You can make small squares, you can make big squares, but it will look really nice in whatever you decide to do. This would also even look really good as a smaller baby blanket if done using something like a Shapey's Whirl. That would obviously look really nice as well. But make sure that you subscribe to the channel and also follow me on Instagram if you're able to. And at this point I just wanted to say as well that in the playlist, which I will leave a link to in the description box, that playlist is called the Pick and Mix Granny Square playlist, and every single one of the squares that will be listed in that playlist now and also over the coming weeks, they all will have the exact same stitch count. And so what that means is you will be able to make up a blanket consisting of numerous different designed squares, but all of the ones in that playlist all have the exact same stitch count, so you'll be able to mix and match any of those squares together to make a really unique and interesting blanket. But I just wanted you to know that they were all the same stitch count and can be used all together. But yeah, I'll leave a link for that in the description box. So I'm just using some leftover cotton for this. So we want to start with our slip knot, and then I will zoom in a little bit. Okay, so as always we're going to start with our chain of 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then we're going to slip stitch into that first stitch to make a circle. So yarn over and pull through both of those loops. So we're going to start this very first round just as a normal granny square. So we're going to chain 2, and that chain 2 counts as our first treble crochet. So please remember that I'm working in UK terms here, so in the US this is your double crochet. So whenever you hear treble, which is what you'll hear all the way through this tutorial, then just remember it's your double. So that counts as our first one. So then we want 2 more trebles because all of our granny clusters are clusters of 3 trebles. So yarn over, back into that centre circle, yarn over and pull up. I'm only going to do this first set slowly with you. Yarn over and pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's your treble. So 1 more, yarn over, insert back into that centre circle, yarn over and pull up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is your first set of trebles. So that is your first granny cluster. We're going to create a corner now by chaining 2. And then back into that centre ring you're going to do another granny cluster, so another 3 trebles. Like I say, if you're a real beginner and aren't familiar with the treble stitches, then I would recommend just going and learning those and then coming back to this tutorial. It's 2. And 3. So again, that's our next cluster. So we're going to chain 2 to create the corner, and we're going to repeat that again now. So 3 trebles, 1, 2, 3, and one final time we're going to chain 2 to create that corner. And then obviously we have got our 1 side left to do, so we'll do our 3 more trebles. 1, 2, and 3. But at this point you need to make sure that you create your 4th and final corner, so chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 2 from the beginning of the round. So insert that hook through the stitch and slip stitch, so yarn over and pull through both. So that is the very start of your square. We're now going to chain 1 and we're going to turn our work around, and then you're going to slip stitch back into that corner space. So insert your hook and slip stitch. So we're working up now from this corner. You're going to chain 2 again, and that is going to count as our first treble. And this is where we're going to start working the 50-50 pattern. So the first half of this corner we are going to create now, and then we're going to finish off the other half of the corner when we get back round. So the first half of this corner is going to be a normal granny cluster. So we've got the chain 2, which counts as our first treble. So we want 2 more trebles back in that corner space. That's 1 and 2. We're now going to chain 1. Try and keep your chain 1s quite nice and loose, otherwise your work may start to bunch up a little. So do your chain 1. We're going to jump across this granny cluster and work straight into this next chain space. So we're going to create a corner, so we're going to do a granny cluster. So 3 trebles, 2, 3. Create the corner space by doing your chain 2, and then back into that same corner space that you've just worked these into, you're going to do your next granny cluster. So 3 trebles again. And 3. Again, you're going to chain 1 and you're going to jump across this granny cluster and work into this next chain space. But this corner is going to be different from the last because we're going to have a split corner. So you're going to do your 3 trebles for your normal granny. 2 and 3. You'll chain 2 as normal. But now, because we are halfway around our granny square, as you can see, we need to swap now to the solid granny stitch. So the solid granny stitch, we will only be doing 2 trebles in the corners, followed by the chain 2 and 2 trebles. So it's different from the traditional granny. So you're going to have 2 corners that are going to have 1 of each of those stitches in. So we're going to do 2 trebles back into this same corner space, and 2, and now we're going to put 1 treble into the top of each of these trebles from the last row. You're going to be working in the whole of the stitch, so you're going to yarn over, go through the whole of that stitch, making sure you've got that V on the top, and do your treble. So you've got 3 trebles here to work into. 2 and 3, and then we're at the corner space, so we're going to do a completely solid corner, so we're going to do 2 trebles, 1 and 2, chain 2 and 2 trebles, 1 and 2. We're going to work along this final side now by doing 1 treble into the top of each of those trebles from the previous row. So 1, 2, and this third one can be a little bit tricky, but you can see we've got a nice space there to work into. So that is your final one. And then we need to finish off this corner space. So we've already got half of it here with this normal granny cluster. So we want to finish it on the solid by doing 2 trebles. So 1 and 2. You're going to chain 2 to finish off the corner and then slip stitch into the top of that chain 2. I'm just going to bring back this example piece. So it is completely up to you how many rounds you want to do before you swap and change, but I'm personally going to do 3 rounds and then change around, but you could do just one, you could do 2, you could do 15, it doesn't really matter, but I'm just going to keep it the same as this one purely for the sake of the tutorial. So I've done my first 2 rounds there now, so I'm going to do one final round in that pattern and then I'm going to switch it around. So we've slip stitched, so now again chain 1 and turn and slip stitch back into that corner space, chain 2, and now because we've turned we're actually working back along the row that we've literally just completed, so we're working back along that solid edge. So because it's a solid edge we only want one more treble here because that chain 2 counts as our first one, and then you've got this group of trebles to work into, so you'll have 7 trebles there to work into. So work a treble into the top of each of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, and then again you're at your corner space, so you want to do your solid corner, so 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles back in that corner space again, 1 and 2, and again now you'll have your 7 trebles, so work into the top of each of those. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So now we are at the split corner, so you're going to do a solid start, so 2 trebles, chain 2, but now we're working back to the traditional grannies, so you need to do your granny cluster, so you need to do your 3 trebles back in that chain space, 1, 2 and 3, chain 1, skip across to this first chain space here and do your granny cluster, so 3 trebles, 1, 2 and 3, chain 1, again keep those chain 1s relatively loose, and then you're going to work your traditional granny corner, so granny cluster, 1, 2, 3, chain 2, and back in that same space you'll put the other half of your corner, so you 3 trebles again. Chain 1, jump to your next chain space along that side, chain 1, and then we're back to pretty much where we started from. We've completed half that corner, so we just want to do the other half, which is your granny cluster. 2, 3, so finish with your chain 2 and slip stitch to the top of that beginning chain. Okay, so that's my 3 rounds, and now I want to swap over so that my traditional grannies are going to sit on top of my solid and my solids are going to sit on top of my traditional. So again, chain 1 and turn and slip stitch back into that corner, chain 2, and so this is the traditional granny side, so this is now going to become our solid, so we're going to do 1 more treble in that corner space, and then we're going to do 1 treble into the top of every treble and 1 treble into the chain 1 space. So work 1 treble into the top of these 3 stitches, So 1, 2 and 3, and then you're going to do a treble in that chain 1 space, and then a treble into the top of the next 3 trebles, and a treble in the chain 1, and then we're nearly at our corner now, so you'll do a treble into these final 3 stitches, and we're at our corner. So again, we're doing a solid corner, so 2 trebles, 1 and 2, chain 2 and 2 trebles back in that same corner, 1 and 2, and you're going to work now down this next side in the exact same way as the last one. So 1 treble into the top of each treble and a treble in the chain 1 space. So if you want to complete that, but just make sure that you do the treble in that chain 1 space, otherwise your stitch count is going to be all over the place. So I've completed all of those trebles now, and now I'm up to my corner. So again, we're going to do the solid, so we're going to do 2 trebles, but now we are switching, so chain 2, and obviously we are approaching our solid side from the previous row, so now we're going to switch to the traditional. So we need to start the other half of this corner with a normal granny cluster, so 3 trebles, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and we're going to skip 3 trebles, so make sure you count this very first one, so 1, 2, 3, and you're going to do a granny cluster into the 4th, so into the whole of the top of that stitch. You'll do your 3 trebles, so all in that same stitch, 2, 3, chain 1, skip 3 trebles, so skip 1, 2, 3, and in the 4th you'll do your 3 trebles. So 1, 2, 3. Chain 1, and then you should be skipping those final 3 trebles and working your traditional granny corner. So granny cluster, chain 2, granny cluster, so chain 2 and that final granny cluster, chain 1, and then again you're going to skip 3 and cluster in the 4th. So 1, 2, 3, cluster. Chain 1, skip 3 and 3, chain 1, and then you should be back at your starting point pretty much. You should be able to skip 3 final trebles and then do that final granny cluster in that corner space. So 2, 3, chain 2 and slip stitch to close at the top of that beginning chain 2. So that now is how you should be looking now that we have switched around. Okay, so now we are going to complete it in the same way as before, because we're going to do 2 more rounds where it's all the same. So like we did at the beginning, you're going to do 2 more rounds now where you will have the same thing. So you'll have your solid sides on top of one another and your granny sides, traditional grannies, on top of one another again, and you will do 2 more rows of that if that's what you're intending to do. And then if you want to meet me one final time, I'll just show you how to swap between the 2 designs one final time. I've now created 2 more rounds in that same stitch, so obviously I've got 3 more rows now of the solid and 3 rows of the traditional, and I'm ready to swap over again to mix it up. So I've done my chain 1 and turned and slip stitched, and then we will do the chain 2, and we're swapping from traditional to solid. So you'll do your 1 treble, and then you will do your treble into the top of each of the trebles. Two and 3, and then the treble into the chain 1 space. So you'll work those solid sides around these next 2 sides, remembering to do your solid corner in this one. So your 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles, and I will meet you back one final time when we'll switch back to the traditional granny. So I've worked my last trebles into the top of those trebles, and I'm at the corner now where it needs to be split. So it will be your 2 trebles, chain 2, and now we are going to work along this side, the solid side, and we're going to start with your traditional granny cluster in that chain space. Chain 1, skip the top of 3 trebles, so you're going to skip 1, 2, 3, and granny cluster into the 4th. Chain 1 and skip 3 again, and then cluster. And then when you get to this corner here, you're going to obviously do your traditional granny corner, so your granny cluster, chain 2, granny cluster, and work that all the way back around. And hopefully now that is enough of the pattern explained for you so that you can pause, rewind, do whatever you need to do and able to create and complete a blanket made up of multiple little squares or of big ones, whatever you like. But as I said at the beginning, do remember that all of the squares that are in the Pick and Mix Granny Square playlist all have the same stitch count, so you can swap and mix them up all in the same blanket and they would all work really nicely together. But that is it for this 50-50 variation. I really hope that you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to sharing the next variation with you very soon. But thanks as always for watching, and bye bye for now.